It's a bit like the circle line, ladies wearing sparkly boob tubes. Evening all, welcome back to the channel. So, I bet you've never seen an orbital megaspace legendary megaspace. That took a lot of effort to think that through. Let me show you progress. This has been a labour of love, I can tell you. We have legendary now, so everything is basically legendary. Let's start with the shuffle. You saw this in the last video. Even standing still, it's working quite well. I've got to admit, I'm actually quite surprised. And what it's doing, I'm just going to walk you through the process. So it's creating legendary coal, okay? That then gets dumped onto the belt, and then this begins a process where it then runs around the omnibelt all the way up to here, where it creates plastic. Okay, so you're following, good. That then goes all the way through to, I have to remember where I put them now, here, where we are then taking said plastic, we're bunging normal stuff in with it, like the molten iron and copper, and oh look, legendary low density structures that then get recycled and then bunged back on. So we're getting, again, our legendary plastic back, some legendary steel, which at the moment we're bunging into space because that's how we roll. And then we have the most important one, which is legendary copper. Following so far, good. We then have a shuffle going on for our legendary iron. The legendary iron is then just processed like in the old days, in the starter days, doing some tutorial videos at the moment because I've realized I've never done any, and I probably should, because actually, you know, it's very difficult to come into Factorio and get to sort of where we are talking here if you've never seen tutorials. And actually I quite like tutorial videos. Reminds me of when I started my career back in the city. I was basically given all the boring stuff to do, like, hey, go and do some tutorial PowerPoint slides. So it takes me all the way back. This is creating legendary iron. That legendary iron is then transported through the Omni belt up to a place where it meets with legendary copper, and then all of a sudden we have legendary green circuits that then get combined with legendary, oh look, legendary red circuits that then get whisked along, conveyed if you will, all the way to legendary blue circuits. Oh, that alone was not that much gameplay actually. That I'm amazed how quickly I did all this. But if I just zoom out, you can see we are filling up nicely. In fact, we're getting to a point now where I think we're gonna get rid of all of this and move this to things like here and here. And even this, I think probably we're going to get rid of that because, to be honest, we could just channel it through the asteroid belts. But the point is we're now getting all the basic components. Allow me to demonstrate thusly. So is that our input? I think I've just realized an error. Yes, I've just seen an error. Let's just fix that error. Because you do have to make sure that you are constantly sending this full belt there. So you can see here, we're struggling a bit with plastic. That's because we're struggling a bit with coal. That's because we're struggling a bit with legendary carbon. But don't worry, we'll get there. But you can see here in red the current makeup of said belt. I'm not sure why we've got lube on there. Oh, well, yeah, probably, I can't remember. But you can see it's working quite well. The green is in demand, so hopefully that you remember that from the last video, hopefully. But what you see is really, I think, probably the first legendary space mega base I've ever seen. And we are now looking at a point where, to be honest, in fact, we could do some manufacturing here. Maybe that's what we do. I think we can move all of this so that, in fact, I'm just going to do it because I feel the need to do it. I think, honestly, though, these water builders things, I think we could probably just dump ice onto the belt. I mean, the belt is saturated. Well, that's not technically true. The belt is busy. It's a bit like the circle line in the morning at about 7 a.m. where it's basically just drunks, ladies wearing sparkly boob tubes, staggering back from the night, and basically your workman's in their overalls going to work. This is very akin to that. Very London specific reference there, but there we go. And I think, I mean, here we can see it's getting a bit busier now. So we're sort of Jubilee line here now at 8 a.m. with all the titty wankers going to the city and Canary Wharf. But it's getting, I mean, again, it's all in one direction as well. So it's getting busy. But I think we're okay at the moment. I think we do probably have to think a bit more about how we control that. And the way to control it, just if you're interested, the way to control it is always through the signals. So you see here, we're giving these signals in that create then the demand. So currently we're not putting copper cable on there because that would sink the entire belt. But we are aware that electronic circuits are a problem. So if I go here, where is my... There it is. So if I go here, we can see, I mean, we've got 8,000 of the flipping things. I don't even think we need 4,000 of them. So I'm actually going to just change that because that is a really good example of the demand. And the way you do it is through this thing here, you can basically set the magnification. So we're going to drop this down to 5. So now that's only 1,000. So therefore demand is dropped to 3,000. That's how I would say is the best thing to do here, because if I go to blue circuits, for example, we have another one here where it's saying, okay, 5. We've already measured this one down a tiny bit, but there's something here. Maybe it's red circuits. It's still not huge, 5,000. So I've obviously gone around trying to kind of tailor this, but there we go. So that's kind of what you have to be a bit mindful of this, because this could sink the base. However, we have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 slots left, plus space. In fact, an abundance of space. Maybe this is where we do some of our production. What are we producing? Well, we can produce pretty much everything now. So, well, again, subtext, almost everything. So things like a planetary specific, obviously we can't do that. But what we can do, I guess, is supplies. So things like legendary speed modules 2 and production modules 2, they're actually quite useful. So I think those could be things that we maybe produce. Now, this presents an interesting challenge, which is that we have to figure out how to then get things back into here. So even though I really couldn't figure out the kind of omni filter thing, I couldn't do it. So post in the comments if you're cleverer than me, which is not a good idea because all of you are. But basically this I couldn't figure out. But now we're in a position where actually maybe we need to think about, well, let's set up some logic to say, you know, this number of products are here, for example. You know, if we build, I don't know, something like here, arms, you know, boxes, things like that. Instead of relying on Nauvis to supply that, we could actually have the orbital base do that. And I think this starts an interesting challenge, because I think this is probably what sort of things we're going to make. And then we have to figure out how to say, okay, when one of the, because they'll be obviously put onto the omnibelt. So again, huge problem. But if we put them in small quantities, it should be okay, shouldn't it? Because it's only going to be like, you know, 50 arms. And 50 arms stacked should only be 5 spaces. Am I right in that? I can't remember if it's 10 or not. But either way, I think that's probably the best way to do that. So all it will then do is, because it has to come back to this sort of CPU centralized hub here, that this is non-negotiable. And I think that's kind of what we have to factor in. There's a lot of green circuits on this. I'm very suspicious. I wonder what's calling them. Let's just have a quick look, because I do think there's a suspicious amount of green circuits being requested, but I can't think where. Let's see. Okay, so probably this is going to request a lot. Yeah, 2. So let's take that down to so that's another 1,000 off. Good. We're just making what's its names because we want to make legendary ones, and we have to. Do we have to mix them? I can't remember. Do you know what? I just can't remember. I don't think we do actually, but just making drones because that's helpful. We may even change that to just be legendary now that we have all the bits. And maybe the next thing we start doing is thinking about legendary batteries, legendary motors as well. But for now, this is more kind of in the speed module area, so things with circuits would be useful. I think we're looking pretty good though, because I mean it looks as if we're sort of producing relatively okay. We've got 4,000 of them. Again, 8,000. I wonder if we're requesting them here. Probably. I think we are. Yes, so 10. Let's just drop that down to 5. So it's another 1,000 off. So the demand now is only 4,000. There we go. So I think that's pretty good. So that will probably help loads. I mean, the ultimate goal is this. Is that. And I think we're not far off it now. I think we're going to do it at some point. And then we have basically our Borg hexagon sphere cube thing. And I quite like it. I don't even know if it can build that. I mean, if I keep scrolling, I hope it can. I think we're at that point pretty much soon, because I honestly think we're going to run out of little modules. And at the moment we're doing okay, but I can see that it's going to happen. Plus, if you look at it, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 are all sort of dedicated to fuel. So maybe it's time to kind of rationalize fuel. Maybe we just have one here. And when it comes to fuel, yes, it's a pain, but I think you can route fuel all the way around. Plus, do we really need engines on these? Maybe we don't. Ooh, that's an interesting thought. I don't care that it literally crawls along at 100 meters per second or whatever, because at the end of the day, it's not built like your mum. It's not built for speed. And I think that probably, oh no, I need those. That probably is the thought process now, is that we have to think about what do we really want to do with said base. I think probably the centralized fuel thing, I think, is a good idea, because while I like this, here's the problem with it, because currently we do grab an awful lot of rocks, like your mum, and what we basically have to then figure out is, currently we're just bunging almost all of it over the side, which is a shame. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's a shame. We have then production split across the 3 here. So we have basically anything that's grabbed is then produced and provided. Now, the sharing of resources is very minor, because I think the only place we're doing that is here. We're sharing the sulfur and carbon, just so that we can make rockets. But we don't need to do that anymore, because honestly, this produces enough, and we've got a full rocket belt. So I think we probably could do away with this belt, and then maybe we just say, right, we don't have resource production here. Maybe we just have an asteroid belt. I mean, is that a possibility? Because we've got asteroid belt here. Let's see. Yes, so here. So currently this thing goes all the way around. Yeah, so it sort of could do this, because everything caught here is then sent. It's a bit of a logistical nightmare, this. You can see it's a bit of a challenge, but I think we could even, I mean, again, hold on to your cups of coffee now, but we could finally set up an asteroid grabbing system that has intelligence. I know, amazing, right? Because what we could do is have, like we've got with the Omni Belt, which is all the way around, we could now set up a asteroid belt that will then be connected to all of the grabbers. As I'm saying this, my brain is warming up so much that it's literally steaming, that then it stops grabbing what it doesn't need. Ooh, interesting thought. Much like some of the more logical systems I've built much later in the game, because I've done this with things like Strangely Beige. That now has that, I believe, if I come to Strangely Beige. This thing is all wired together so that it only grabs what it needs, which works really well, actually. So maybe it's time we do that, because I can feel this base, the old technology is creaking. But do you know what puts me off it very slightly is the significant belting that's required. I mean, the majority, I mean, like, why is that there? That really annoys me. So maybe we just take the hit and we say, let's build a wire in, reconfigure, that's a good word, the entire asteroid belt. That's funny. To basically feed into a centralized one here. See, I don't think that'll work. Well, it might, because we don't need 2 rocket production facilities now. We could have that here. Oh my days. You see what I mean? This base has become such a labor of love, and I want to do great big things with it, but I'm now starting to realize that I have to make some pretty big design decisions pretty soon, because otherwise it's still going to be 3 separate bases sort of tied together, and I feel like that's probably what's needed. Plus, I think we should augment the defenses here a little bit, because literally one rock carves through that, or there, or there, or there, and I lose a third of the base, which is never good. So I think that might be something we look at. In fact, what would be super smart is to actually reconfigure the base so that these lines here are here, gosh, this is like incredible design. And if we had our third layer, you would even have like, if I, oh, not cut, copy, not cut, you could have something like that. Do you know what I mean? And then the line is at the bottom, and then it's prongs moving forward. Goodness me, there's so many exciting things that I want to do with this flipping thing as we look at a hot rod. Yep, that makes steel rods or iron rods. So I think, post in the comments, tell me your thoughts. I would be intrigued to know what you would recommend here, because I can see there is an interesting, challenging way to do this. And it really comes down to how bothered can I be to build a third layer, B, maybe move some of the stanchions. I mean, we kind of need them, but again, we could just extend these. These could extend out, move all of the engine production to maybe one, and just maybe have one engine. Oh my days, this is breaking my brain already. But I think because this has worked so well, this kind of system, I do like this. I am very partial to doing this in almost everything I do now. And I think when you start playing Space Age, I'm going to take a guess here that most of us were not particularly supercharged on circuitry. It was always something that, you'd see other people do. And you'd always be like, I wonder how they did that. Well, I've always been like that. And it's only through tinkering that I'm starting to realize that circuitry is actually quite straightforward. It's logical. It makes sense. And if you try and put your head into that kind of logical sense, it does work. But then I think it starts to become a bit of a challenge, because it just means you can do so much more. And I honestly think that there's so much more we could do with this base. There we go. I'm not sure. I think we're going to have to take a bit of a think about this. Post in the comments. Let me know your views. What would you do? What would you have as your kind of next step? We could just finish the base here and just have all of these filled, and then start to maybe slowly migrate. So maybe we add one base here. Maybe that's a good thing to do. And then we start to look at maybe some of the sort of stanchions between these being here rather than there, just because, again, if we do, I don't think we could go to, like, let's say system edge at all at the moment, but particularly not at the moment because we haven't got railguns. But, we're going to redesign this so that it does have railguns. We then have an ammo problem, but we have to think about that. But I do think there is definitely some scope here. And plus, it's all free. Like, I'm not providing these resources. It's asteroids being grabbed, upscaled, crushed, chopped and sliced, and then put into the system. And basically everything we're doing here is technically free. I mean, that is also true of Nauvis, but this particularly is true. And I just think that if we get to a point where, imagine a save game where the only thing you've got on Vulcanus is not this mega base, it's a tiny little platform here that just creates these things. Wouldn't that be an interesting run through? You have basically orbital megaspace, and I definitely want to do that. I want to be going and visiting strange new worlds with this platform, knowing full well that it basically is producing everything that I could possibly need. And then I live from this thing. I mean, that must be what the engineer ultimately does, right? Is he lives in space, because for them, space is so easy. I mean, post in the comments if you disagree, but I think there's something about that. Anyway, there we go. So I think this takes us to a point where, the orbital mega basey stuff, I think is, got a slight problem here, is definitely always coming to an end in my book. It feels like we're getting to a point where I can see there's definitely something now to finish here, because I honestly think once we've moved everything to the legendary space base, and it literally produces the majority of the things that we could create entirely on the ground, I do like the idea of then packing up, just moving to space. I think there's something quite engaging about that, and I'm quite excited to see if we can maybe do that. Let's see if I can get this guy to follow. No, don't think I did it. It's so funny. I love Spidertrons. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed that. Post in the comments. Let me know your mind thoughts on Megaspace legendary Megaspace base, and let's maybe come to a consensus and agree what the next steps could be. I think I will kind of look to maybe expand it, but I think at the moment I think the centralization is a word that I will leave in your brains for next time.